Alright, so before we begin, you can download the Blender from blender.org. Simply click on this button. You don't need to fill any form or subscribe to anything. You can choose the operating system you're using and simply click on this button. So once you are into Blender, this is what you see when you open the Blender for the first time. There's a nice little splash screen, and these are the default colors and the interface and the theme. So the first thing you may notice is this beautiful 3D viewport. Whatever we create here, that is what you are going to see in the final animation or the still image. This is your 3D viewport. Before we get into any other details, I just want to do a quick run through of what you see on the screen right now. Okay, over the top left you have standard menus like any other computer application. Over the left you have tools for basic stuff like move, rotate and scale, and these tools actually change when you are in different modes. If you are into painting mode like texture painting, these will change to the paint related options, and if you are into sculpt mode, then these will change to the sculpting brushes. On the right top we have object outliner. Now you can organize your scene with this. Whichever object you create in the 3D viewport will be listed over here. There are options to organize like with the help of collections. Collections are like folders, and you can use these collections to set up render layers as well. In the bottom right we have the properties panel. There are several different properties over here. The first one is the active tool. It gives you options, available options for the active tool you have. Okay, and the second one is the render properties to set up the render related parameters. Third one is the output, which is for setting up the dimension of the render and like frame size, frame rate, and the output where you want to save it. Then we have render passes and scene properties to set up the unit size, the gravity of the scene, and set up the camera. Then we have the world environment to set up the environment texture, which is like you can also use HDRI in the background or simply use colors or shaders. Object properties, this gives you all the available information for the given object. Right now this is showing our default cubes properties. Modifiers list, which is very extensive list, and we are going to discuss it later. Then we have options to add particle over here, particle properties, and force fields. Then list of constraints and object data, materials, and texture properties. At the bottom we have animation timeline, playback controls. These views you see, these are called editors in Blender. If you hover your mouse over here, you can see this is called 3D viewport. This editor is called outliner, and this editor is called properties. Now you can customize the layout according to your need. If I bring this over here, and I can make this editor into outliner and this editor into 3D viewport. You can also make more windows if you like. Okay, I'm just going to reset this to default outliner and 3D viewport. If I want to add more views or more windows to the view, I'll simply bring my mouse over the top right or any corner of the editor, and then when the cursor changes, click and drag, and this will split the window. And if you want to create more views, you can just click and drag for the corner of the window, and you can change these into any other type of editors as per your preferences, or you can also change it into other views. Okay, like top view, perspective view, right view, so that when you're working you can have a look from the different angles. All right, and if you want to join them back, simply bring your mouse on the partition line and right click, join areas, and hover your mouse in the direction you want to join areas. Or you can join them by simply click and drag from the corner, just like how you split the windows, and this will join it, and it will join in the direction your mouse is. There are several presets available on the top shelf for different kind of workspaces, and we will understand and use them when we move further in the tutorial, because right now it will be too much to discuss because you don't understand the context of it at this moment. Okay, so this is just to give you a quick overview of what is happening on the screen right now. So before we get into any details, I just want to make very small changes in preferences. Go to edit preferences, and in the key map, select with right click and spacebar for search, and save preferences. Now in the older versions of Blender, the right click used to be default selection and the left click was for the 3D cursor. And there are very good uses of 3D cursor, and I would prefer you use the right click selection. It's a very powerful way of working in the Blender. Also, for those who are coming from different softwares, it could be a bit difficult to get used to the right click selection. That is why this option is there. For the rest of the tutorial, whenever we are selecting with, if you are using the default settings, then you will be selecting with the left click, and the right click will be for the special context menu, which is on W if you are using right click. Okay, but we'll talk about this again, so don't worry about it. And spacebar for search. So all the commands, more or less everything is available in the search menu. So very often we might forget where are the commands located, in which menu we need to go. So it's very convenient to just hit spacebar and find the command which you're looking for. So without any further ado, let's select our cube with the right click. If you have left click selection, then you can select it with the left click. Now you'll see when I select the cube, it's also highlighted on the outliner. Now to move this object, I'm going to press G. Okay, I'll press G and G for grab. I'm going to grab this object and move it with the mouse. Okay, I can right click and cancel the command if I want. I can press G and drag it, and left click to confirm the location. Now similarly, if I want to scale the object, I can press S to scale it. Okay, R to rotate it. So now when you'll see our viewport is in the 3 dimension. We have red line for the x-axis, we have a green line for the y-axis, and the vertical one is the z one. Okay, but when we are moving, it's not moving in 3 dimension. Okay, it's like just moving on the according to the screen. To move it in one particular x, you will have to assign the axis with the help of short key. Press G to move it, and then if you hit X on the keyboard, it will only move the object into x-axis. If you press G and Y, then it will only move the object into y-axis. If you press G and Z, then it will move the object in the z-axis. Alright. Similarly for rotation, if I press R and X, it will work in the X direction, R, Y for the Y rotation, R, Z for the Z rotation. Similarly for scaling, SX for scaling in the X direction, SY for Y direction, SZ. Alright. Now if you go to the object properties over here, you will see as we move, rotate or scale the object, these parameters change here, or you can also check these from the viewports panel on the right. This panel shortkey is N if you want to view it. Okay, now when we move the object around or the scale it, these parameters change. Okay, now you can reset these this to default cube. If you press Alt G, it will reset the transformation. Alt S will reset the scale. If it has any rotation, Alt R will reset the rotation. But if you want to apply all the transformation to object, so that in future if you reset anything, it should stay as it is, then you'll have to press Ctrl A on the keyboard and apply all transform. Now you'll see all the basic default values are set to 0. Scale is 1 because scale can't be 0. Okay, so now if I press Alt G, Alt S, nothing is happening because this is the default. These are the default coordinates now. Now you can see right now coordinates are showing in meters, because in the scene properties panel, unit setup, you can see it's assigned meter over here. You can change this to centimeters if you like, or any other metric system. Okay, now you can see the dimensions are showing in the centimeters. All right, so I'm going to delete this one now. We are going to bring few more objects in the scene. Okay, so I'll press Shift A to bring up the add menu, which is also available over here. Shift A, and you can see there is a list of whole lot of things going on here. There are mesh objects, curve objects, and lights, camera, almost everything, all kind of objects in the Blender are available here. From the mesh menu, I'm going to select a cube. Okay, the cube appears here. Now I also want one cylinder here. I'll press Shift A to bring one cone. Okay, now I'll select these and place them where I want. Okay, now every time I create an object, it appears in the center on top of each other. Okay, but I want them to appear where I want to create them. Okay, to do that, we are going to use 3D cursor. Okay, actually when you create a new object, it appears where the 3D cursor is. So if I click here, and now if I add one torus, it will appear where the location of the 3D cursor was. If I click here, cone, then you can see this is much easier way. If you're working in a bigger layouts and scenes, uh, every time you don't have to drag a new object which is created in the center of the on the grid. Okay, and also this 3D cursor is not just like a computer cursor, it has a depth. This takes the viewport depth into consideration, or the surface which you click on. Let's say if I click here, you can see the 3D cursor is on this particular face of the object. If I click here, then you'll see the 3D cursor is snapped on top of this cone. So now if I add one UV sphere and scale it down, you can see the movement is pretty much precise. If I want to add another cube here, I can easily create objects where I want. Now 3D cursor have many other uses which we will discuss later. So now that we have a few objects in the scene, I want to have a look around them in 3D from different angles. So to do that, I'm going to press middle mouse and rotate the view. Okay, I can rotate the view up and down, left to right. If I want to zoom in and out, press Ctrl and middle click, zoom in and zoom out. With the shift middle click, you can drag it on the left, right, top, bottom. Now also you can change this viewport to different other views, like if we create one window here, I'm going to close this panel with the N. Okay, I want to see it from the front view in this panel. Then I can press 1 on the keyboard to bring up the front view, and if I press 3, then it will bring up the right view. Okay, now if you press 1 for the front view, 3 for the right view, and 7 is for the top view. Now you might be wondering what these numbers are, and these might won't make any sense right now, but if you have a look at this indicator and go to the front view, you can see the Z is upwards, X is on the right, and the Y is in the front. Now if you imagine the layout of the number pad keyboard and you compare it with this, now 1 is the default one, the front viewport. Okay, now if you want to move upwards, the uppermost key is the 7 and the rightmost key is the 3. Okay, so this is this way it's easier to remember, like 1 for the front, 7 for the top, 3 for the right view. If you press Ctrl 1, it will be left click, left view. If you press Ctrl 7 for the bottom view, Ctrl 3 for the left view. Okay, if you want to bring back the perspective, simply press 5 on the numpad and it will become a perspective view. All right, now if you select any object and press dot on the number pad, it will zoom onto that particular object so you can focus on it. And also if you want to isolate this one and just focus on this one, hit the forward slash. Forward slash is for the local view or like isolation. Once you are done editing the object, you can always hit the forward slash again to exit the local view. If you get confused about the axis at any moment, you can use this indicator, and you can also hover over your mouse to look at the shortcuts. Right now it's showing a shortcut number pad 1, number pad 3 and number pad 7. Okay, so I'll quickly reset my scene from the file menu. Click on general, don't save. One more thing, when you create new objects, let's say if I create a cone over here, now before I drop the object or like use any other command, you can see this option is available, which can be expanded, and this gives you option to tweak this newly created object. This option is only available immediately after you have made one object and you haven't dropped the selection. Once you drop the selection, that option is gone and you cannot change it. Okay, so let's say if you create a torus, you can zoom in and zoom out, that is okay. So now I just want to set up the segments, like how many points I want in the surface. Okay, if I want very low resolution, high resolution, or I want it to look like four-sided torus. Transformation, you can always do that later, but to set up the segments and all, this is very useful. Okay, and you can also control parameters like radius and stuff. Now if you create torus again, then it will appear just like the previous one, because it's taking all those settings which you just did into consideration. If you want to reset it, just click on the restore defaults, then the torus will appear just like how it was by default. Now that we have a few objects in the scene, I'm going to quickly just grab a few objects and place them in the scene. Before we proceed further, I just want to let you know that you would want to memorize all the short commands we are using, and at least the essential ones like transformation and creating objects, and a few other shortcuts which we will use in editing mode, because Blender is very powerful when you work with just the shortcuts. It's a very fast and efficient way, and the short commands are designed in a way that it's very easy to memorize. Now that we have multiple objects in the scene, you can select the multiple objects by holding down the shift key. If I select this one and hold down the shift key, I can select the multiple objects. Okay, and if you want to deselect any object, you can just hold the shift key and click on the object until it's no longer active. Okay, when it turns gray, it's deselected. Now you might be thinking, what is active object? There are many uses of active object. It's a way of communicating within the Blender that this one is the highlighted object is the active one. So when you shift select, or the most recent selection is the active object. Okay, if I deselect anything, so if I only have one object, then that one object is active object. If I have multiple objects selected, then the recent selection is the active object, the one with the yellow border. Now let's say if I want to transfer colors from this object to these objects, or the materials, or any other information, so I can use commands like transfer from the active object to the other selection. And also when you are parenting, you would need to use active object. You can also use this for transformation. I just want to let you know what the active object is at this stage. We won't be using it for now, but I will explain later when we get into more complicated commands. Okay, you can also select multiple objects with the help of box selection. Press B on the keyboard and simply click and drag, and it will select all the objects within the box selection. Okay, and if you want to deselect with the box selection, press B and middle mouse drag, it will deselect. Okay, if I just want to deselect these two, middle mouse drag and selection with the left mouse. There are also other options available like lasso and circle selection, but most of the time you will be using the B command. You can also hit A key on the keyboard to select everything. If you press it twice, it will deselect everything. Alright, I'm going to select everything and just delete it. Let's say you have moved your 3D cursor somewhere and you want to reset it on the default location, which is in the center. Press Shift S, and Shift S is for the cursor menu, and then you can Shift S cursor to world origin. Okay, so I'll just bring one monkey head over here in the center. Okay, now I can duplicate stuff with the shift D. If you press sorry, I'll just enable my screencast over here. So if I press shift D to duplicate stuff, and then you can move them wherever you want. Okay, now what I'll do is, right now these are all facing in same direction. I'll just make some random rotations. All right, bring one over here and make this one face in this direction. All right, I just wanted to clarify a few of the options which are available over here, and these are very important if you want to manipulate stuff more efficiently. So okay, I have these four monkey heads facing in different directions. Okay, and right now these are in global coordinates. Okay, so what are the global coordinates? This is minus x, this is plus x, this is minus y, this is plus y, this is minus z, this is plus z. Okay, these are global coordinates. Okay, I can change this to local axis. Now what this means is, if you select anything, let's select this object, or I'll select this one. If I change this rotation here, now you'll see the z direction is tilted upwards. Okay, now this is not parallel to the world z direction. If you change this to global, right now you see the rotation in the z, the gizmo is showing parallel line with the grid. That is because we are using the global coordinates. If I change this to local, this will switch to this direction because we made some rotation in this model. Okay, so if I try to move everything in global, what happens is they all move global coordinates, so they all will be moving in same direction. Now if I want to move them in their own local coordinates, I'll change this to local. Now see what happens if I move them into z direction. Now they are all moving in their own z direction, they are all moving in their own y direction and x direction. And this is what global and local means. So these are very important if you are animating stuff, and also if you want to efficiently place models more effectively. So I'll encourage you to try these out as well. And also there are a few options for transform pivot point. Now what transform pivot point means, if you select everything and try to rotate it, sorry, I'll go back to global. Now if you select everything and try to rotate it, now what happens is, when you make any transformation, it takes the center of the selection as the average point and makes the transformation from the center. Okay, especially the rotation or the scale. Now that is because right now the transform pivot point is set to bounding box center. So the bounding box which is around all these four objects, that is what considered as the transform pivot point, the center of that bounding box. Now if I change this to 3D cursor, see what happens. If I place my 3D cursor over here and try to rotate this, these objects will rotate from 3D cursor point. Okay, now right now this might sound very simple, but it's very effective when you combine this with soft selection, especially in object editing mode. Okay, we'll talk about this further in next chapter, but this is just so that you understand this command. Now if I change this one to individual origins, now see what happens if I change this to local and individual origins. Like what we discussed, instead of all moving together or all rotating from the center, they all will rotate in their own local axis. Now this is so much convenient if you want to animate stuff. Okay, if I change this to active element, then what happens is, whatever is the active element, as we discussed, the highlighted object is the active element. You can change this by shift. Now the center of the rotation will be the active element. So right now if I say, if I place one over here and select everything, okay, this one is the active element. Now the rotation will happen from this point. If I make this one active element, then rotation will happen from this point. All right, Now these are very useful commands when you're working with the complex transformations, and you will get used to them when we move forward and create some basic setup and use them in the right context. Now when you're working with the shortkeys, to access the local transformation with the shortkeys, you'll have to use. So now let's say your view is the transformation orientation is set to the global, and you want to move this object in with the short key. Okay, then you'll have to press G, Y and Y again. Okay, then it will change to the local axis. If I press GY, it's moving in the global. If I press G double Y, then it will snap to the local axis. G double Y, G double X. So you'll just have to hit the axis key twice to assign the transformation into the local orientation. I just delete everything and bring few cubes over here. Okay, now let's talk about what snapping means. Okay, so this option over here is called snapping. If you are familiar with any other graphical software, I'm sure you might be familiar with what snapping means. So right now if I try to, let's say if I want to move this point, this vertex over here, okay, then it might take me several attempts to match it to that box, okay, to that corner. And what I can do is I can use this option, the snapping. Okay, now by default this is set to increment. What this does is, if you try to move your object, this will use the grid and incrementally move your object. Okay, now if I change this one to vertex, see what happens. If I try to move the object, it will snap to the closest vertex. So right now if I want to move this point over here, I'll grab this one and move this over here, and it will perfectly snap over here. Okay, now if you want to move this point to this point, now what you'll have to do is you'll first have to bring this one close to this one, otherwise it won't pick it up. Okay, then you can move it to this point. Okay, now let's try a few more attempts. Now you can move this one close to this one, and if you want to snap this point over here, then first bring close to this one and then you can snap it. Okay, and if you don't have the snapping on, you can simply while moving press Ctrl and this will snap your object. Okay, simply press Ctrl, whatever is the option available over here, it will take that and toggle the snapping. Alright, so this is just for the movement, and there are other options. If you want to rotate, scale and use the snapping, that also works. Let's say right now this object, I want to scale this to this height, then I can enable scale as well. And now if I try to scale this one and press Ctrl, then when it reaches this point's height, it will stop. Okay, it will snap to this height. So you can use this in scaling as well. Sorry, scale in Z direction, S, Z, and press Ctrl to that point and it will snap. Okay, you can also rotate and use snapping. If I rotate this one and use Ctrl, it will snap to this point or snap to the point you want to just move your mouse in that particular direction, that point, and it will snap to that point. Okay, so alright, I'll just reset this one. There are a few more options over here. Now to clarify these, what I'll do is simply bring one UV sphere over here and make this shade smooth. Okay, now let's bring one simple torus object. Okay, now if I make this one to align rotation to target, if I click this option, yeah, just go to the face mode and project individual elements. Now see, if you want to quickly duplicate stuff, these will automatically pick up the orientation of the surface you are projecting on, and this is so much convenient. Alright, So you don't have to all the time just create an object and align it manually. So I just want you to know there are options available to speed this task up. Okay, you can simply enable face mode and go to align rotation to target and enable these two, and these will work. Okay, all right. All right, so the next option is proportionate editing, and I think this is not the right time to discuss this. We'll talk about this one in the next chapter when we are editing objects, okay? And I think then that is when you'll be able to understand it more. And over here we have several display options. Now the first one is view object types, okay? Now let's say if I have one camera in the view, and sorry, I'll just disable this one, and I have few lights over here, okay, different kind of lights, and I have few force fields. Okay, now when you are using animation previews, it could be a bit distracting to have all these elements in your scene. Okay, so you can use what kind of object types you want to show in the viewport. Okay, if you don't want to show the lights in the viewport, you can disable the lights in the viewport. You can also disable any other kind of object. If I want to disable the force fields, then I can use empty. Okay, so this will leave only the mesh objects in the viewport. This is a very good tool for organizing your view. Also there are and also this one is for viewport gizmo. If you want to view your viewport gizmo or not, you can just enable or disable it. There are few more settings, but I don't think you need to get into this one at this moment. You can simply enable or disable if you want to, if you are comfortable with the short commands and you don't need this gizmo all the time on the in the scene. It could be a bit distracting, and you can simply disable this one. The next one is show overlays. So right now we can see the grid, and these objects are these are not non-renderable objects. Okay, the only things which renders are the surfaces. Okay, these won't be seen in the render. I mean, the effect of the light will be seen, but these won't do, like these shapes won't show in the render. So you can disable the overlays. This is a very good option if you quickly want to see what is happening in the scene without any distraction. You can simply enable or disable this. There are also a few more options if you want to show wireframes, and also like a 3D cursor, yes or no, grid. You can enable, disable, and increase the size of the grid. But like I said, it's always at this moment it's best to work with the default settings. Now there are a few more options for viewport visibility over here. If you press Z on the keyboard, now this brings up your viewport shading. Now if by default this is showing solid mode. If I disable the wireframe, okay, so if you want to show the wireframe, then press Z on the keyboard and choose wireframe, press Z and solid, and there is a material preview. Now material preview, right now it's not showing anything because there is no material, so this is a material preview. Now there is a render preview. This one will also show the effect of the light. All right, so right now our scene is very basic, that is why you can't see a major difference in all these. Otherwise there is a lot more you can do with this. Okay, I mean you can go to the material preview and choose which kind of HDR you want to use in the background. I mean, there are, when you are shading, you might want to preview object with the different settings, so you can use these HDRs, and you can enable the strength, increase or decrease it. Also you can rotate your HDR in the background. Okay, now let's say if I make this one, okay, this is just for clearing this option. I don't want you to get into any details of material at this moment. So you can change your HDR from here and see the preview of your object, and also you can these options are whether you want to use the scene lights or no, or scene HDR or no. Right now we don't have any HDR in the scene, that is why it's showing black in the background. All right, so one more thing I wanted to discuss before we start exploring more options. Now each of the object you see in the viewport have this yellow dot in the center. This is called the object origin. It's also known as a pivot point in other softwares. Now to explain this, what I'm going to do is I'll press Shift S and cursor to world origin, so that the cursor is in the center. Now let's say if you like let's make it like a door. Okay, I'm going to scale this SY. Yeah, so let's say this is like a door. Okay, I'll press Shift D and duplicate this and select these two and place it in the center. Now let's say when I'm animating these objects, I want them to orient like a door. Okay, like the doors have the doors rotate from one particular direction. Let's say if this is supposed to work, if I want this to rotate like a door, then the origin of this object should be on the sides. Okay, the origin of this door should be on the left, and the origin of this door should be on the right, just like hinges. Okay, if I rotate this one now with a default orientation, I have default origin setup, it's going to rotate from the middle. Okay, this is not how the door works. Now let's say I want to change the origin of this object. Simply click with the 3D cursor where you want the origin to be, and click on the object menu, set origin to 3D cursor, and same for this. Select this object, click over here, object, set origin to 3D cursor. Now if I go to the local and change this to object individual origins, now you'll see when I rotate them in the Z direction, it works like a door. Okay, they are rotating from the sides, not from the center. Now these commands are very the origin is very useful when you are working with the animated objects. Like you can use them for rigging a character when you are working with the armatures or any mechanical setup. And there are several other ways you can change the origin of an object. If you want to reset the origin to the center, simply click center, like mass volume. And if we are, let's say, in the edit mode, object edit mode, if I select this vertex over here, I press Shift S, I can cursor to selected. Now this moves my cursor to this very specific and precise location. Now if I change this to object mode and go to object and set origin to 3D cursor, then you can see my origin point have moved precisely to this particular vertex. Okay, similarly you can work with the edges, and you will understand what the vertex, edges, and the edit object is when we get into the next chapter. But this is just to explain how the origin works, okay, and how you can change it. You can also move the origin from with just the transformation. Now that you have your move tool active, you can go to the active tool properties and click on origins. Now what will happen, this will affect only the origin of object and not the transformation. Now if I move with the transformation tool, you can see only the yellow dot is moving and not the object. Okay, you can move once you are done with the placing your origin. You disable this one, and now if you rotate your object, it will take this point into consideration. Okay, so to understand whatever we have discussed so far, I'm going to make one very simple object. Okay, I'll reset the scene, I'll press A and delete everything. Let's bring a cube and scale it, and press S and Z to scale it down into Z direction. Okay, now I'll enable this panel over here, S, X. Okay, now I'm going to bring one more window over here, make this one front and make this one top. Let's say I'll press G and Z to move it upwards. Now If you want to create legs for this object, place your cursor where the next leg you want to create and add a cube. Okay, so I'm using short commands. You can see over here basic transformations. Now I want to snap this leg over here. I'll move it and press Ctrl. I'll set this to vertex, and now if I move it and press Ctrl, it will snap to this particular vertex. Now I can duplicate with this Shift D and press Y to move it in Y direction, G Y, and hit Ctrl to snap it in, G Y, and hold the Control key to snap it. Now I can select these two with the Shift, and I'll press Shift D and press X to move it into X direction. Now I'll move it with the G and hold Control to snap it on this vertex. So now you can see you have a top view and orthographic view showing what is happening in the 3D view, and this is a perfect table, and you can add more details if you like. Let's say if I make another copy of this and just scale it up, and you want to create copy of these and scale them down like this in the Z axis, S and Z, and if you want to scale them into their own individual origins, just change this option from here. Now G and Z. Okay, now if I want to, now these are actually going inside this leg. I want them to just stick to this surface. What I can do is I can turn on the snapping and click on the face. Okay, so now when I move this with the Z command, you can see it's snapping to this face. You can work in the perspective view if you are comfortable, but if you are making very precise transformations, orthographic views are very useful. And at any moment, if you want to, let's say you have this layout, but you want to focus on this view right now and you want to maximize this, simply press Ctrl space on the keyboard. It will maximize the viewport. Ctrl space to make it to bring back the full layout again. Okay, Control space, and this works for any window. If you want to maximize the this outliner or the property panel, it works everywhere. So now that you have your table, but these are still independent objects. Okay, so what you can do is you can select everything and press Ctrl J. Ctrl J will join all these objects together and make them as one object. Just place them. Now move this object right above the grid, and once you are done, it's a good habit to make sure the origin of every object which you have created is in the center. Okay, now because the object is in the center of the grid, what you can do is press Shift S, cursor to world origin, object, set origin to 3D cursor. Okay, now if I rotate the reset transformation at any time, I need to apply scale. Yeah, so you can also change dimensions if you like from here. If you want to specify any like one specific number, you can always type in the value 4.5 or anything, let's say, and or if you want to move it like 1 meter above or bring it back to 0, you can type in the value. There are different other shading options available over here. Okay, let me just quickly combine these. If you want to look at the wire mesh of this object, press Z on the keyboard and click on the wire mesh. Now you can see the wire mesh of this object. Okay, if you click on the Z and material preview, it will show you a preview of the material which is assigned to it. Okay, so right now there is no material. Let's say if I click on the material and change the color, it will show me a preview of the material. If I press Z and click on the rendered, it will show me a rendered view. Okay, so rendered view is different than material. It also takes the light into consideration. Let's say if I have light in the viewport. Okay, so this is wireframe, solid, material preview, and rendered. Okay, so you can also see the shadows in the viewport, right? Okay. Alright guys, so now that we are aware of the basic interface and transform commands, snapping options, and global, what is a global local view, and like pivot point, origin, I think it's time that we put all this knowledge to use so that we understand them better and we can memorize these commands and develop some muscle memory so that we can move on to the next chapter. It's going to be something very basic. We won't be getting into any further details and just put the basic commands to use and create something which is like rewarding for your first day in Blender. Let's create something like maybe a shop or a building. Okay, something which you see on like a mobile game. Okay, before we begin, let's go to this scene properties. Okay, so I'll go to the scene properties, and here I'm going to change the unit setup. Just check if it's in meters for now. Alright, so the unit setup is in meters already, and I'm going to click over here or just press N to bring up the transformation panel. I'm going to delete this default cube at the center, bring up a new one. I'll press Alt G just so that it's right in the center. And let's say I want this building to be something like 10 meters by 10 meters and 40 meters. Okay, let's zoom it out. Maybe not 40 meter, 20 meters, right? I'm going to press G and Z so that we can move this one right above the grid. Then I'll press Shift D and make a duplicate of it, and just right click to cancel the command so that we have the duplicate right over the building. Okay, now this one I want to be like something like the ground. It could be just 0.2 meters. I'll press Z so that we can see the wireframe. Okay, 0.2, something like this, and maybe the scale could be 30 by 40 meters. Okay, or maybe 20 by 40 meters. Now I'll press G and Z and drag it right beneath the building. Alright, and place this one above the ground. I'll go to the front view and make one more duplicate of this. If you want to place it precisely, you can just change this to vertex, and when moving in the Z direction, hold Control so that it snaps to the ground. Okay, now I'll select this one and change the snapping to face, and G, Z, and hold the Control, sorry, in the perspective view. Yeah, so when I hold the Control key, you can see it's snapping on the face. Okay, this one is for the ground, and this one I want to be I want to split and make it like a road or something. Okay, to make divide this into 50%, I'm just going to I can either make it type 40 meters here, or I can simply divide this by 2. Okay, so you can see this one is perfect, like 50% of this area. Now let's snap this to G and Y and hold on the Control key. Okay, and make one more duplicate, Shift D, and move it into Y direction like this, G, Y, and hold on the Control key and snap it over here. Now just so that we can have a better look at number of objects and the separation lines, because right now everything is gray, what we can do is we can change the shading option to random objects. Okay, now you can see every object in a different color. All right, I'll go to the side view. I'll press 3 on the keyboard and select the ground and deselect the building, and just shift this one in Y direction. All right, okay, I'll get rid of this camera and light so that we have more area in the front and less in the back. Okay, let's duplicate this box again. This could be 15 meters, and move this down and Just scale it up a bit so that this looks like a storefront. Now make a duplicate of this again and move it above, and this one could be, we need something for the rooftop. So here I'm going to make this one 0.5 meter by 0.5 meter and move this right above the building, maybe 1 meter by 1 meter in Y and Z axis. Move this right over here and hold down the control so that it snaps. Okay, shift D, hold down the control and snap it here, and select these two and press R Z and type 90. Sorry, I'm just going to shift D first to make the duplicate, R Z and 90 on the number pad so that this rotates in the 90-degree exactly. Now we can make one more duplicate and scale it down like this and make this one 1 meter or something. So here we want something like a window or something. So what we can do is we can, alright, we are going to create a new cube over here. Okay, first I'm going to just switch on the cavity, maybe world space, so that or the also the shadows, so that we can see faces more clearly. Go to the front view. What I can do is I can bring a cube here, scale this one in Z direction. Okay, scale this down and make it tall. Scale this down a bit and make a duplicate. Okay, so now I'm going to make a duplicate of this one. Okay, and rotate this in 90-degree and place it right above over here to make it like a window or something. And I'll scale this one in X direction and move it just like to fit this width. Okay, all right, and then I'll make a duplicate of this again. I'll make a copy of this again and move it over here and scale it down something like a window partition. And type 90 on the rotation, scale it in X direction, and we can just duplicate this and make few more partitions just like this. Okay, now let's select all these four parts and press Ctrl J to combine them, and select these partition lines and Ctrl J to combine them. Okay, now if you'd like, you can align these objects, like if you hold this one and make this active and press spacebar and type align, you can align object. You can see the align options here. Just click on the X, Y and Z. You can hold down the shift if you want to align in all the 3 dimensions. I'll create a plane and rotate this in X axis, scale it up something like glass or something. Now we are going to select all these 3 parts and make duplicate. Again, select both the windows, shift D and duplicate it. Okay, like this. All right, let's change this to object and see how this looks in grayscale. Deselect everything. All right, now what we can do is we can add some more detail to this. Let's say we need some railing over here. Okay, I'm going to click over here and make a cube and scale it down like maybe 0.5 by 0.5 by 0.5. Okay, we can make this like 20 meters or maybe 30 meters in X direction. Let's lift this up and I'll select these two, press spacebar and align this into only X direction so that it's right at the center. Now we can make a duplicate of this and simply type RX90, sorry, RY90, and make this one like a 1 meter or something, or 2 meters. Okay, move this down, maybe 3 meters. Snap it right over the surface. Now go to the front view, move this right here and make a duplicate of this. Select these two, make a duplicate. Alright. Now there are few modifiers which can help you set up the railing perfectly, but for now let's work with the basics. Shift D, move it in X direction. Okay, 30 and 31. Okay, I'll select all these railing parts and Control J to combine them and align them into x-axis with the building. Okay, Control J. Alright, now I'm going to save this file like a day1 building. Okay, so I'm going to make something like a roadside. Let's create a cube over here and just type 30 in the X direction. Okay, or 40, and I'll align these two. Hold down the control for snapping and Shift D, move it into Y and hold down the control key, G, Y and control for snapping. Okay, and let's create something like maybe road signs, 0.2 and maybe 10 meters, G, Z. Okay, snap it over here, Shift D, okay, and press Control J to combine these three. Alright, maybe we can have some more partitions over here. What I can do is I can click over here and change the pivot point to 3D cursor. Sorry, I'll go to the local, change this to 3D cursor. I'll place my 3D cursor over here, and now if I scale this into Y direction, you can see it's scaling from here. Okay, I'll just press S, Y and scale it down a bit. Okay, and then I'll duplicate this and just move it like this and change the Y dimension to maybe 1 meter or something, GY, and snap it over here. Now change this back to bounding box and scale this up a bit, and maybe we can combine these four and scale them up like a more defined boundary. Shift D and place it over here. Now here we can have a tree, very basic tree representation. I'll make one cube and scale it up maybe 8 meters or maybe much bigger than that. Scale, sorry, S2. Okay, make a duplicate of this, scale this down. So we have something like a tree here, and now we can duplicate this and place it over here, and maybe we can duplicate this again, make them like small bushes. Okay, now we can reduce the height for this one. Let's create few copies of this. and I'm going to change this one and place them over here. Okay, right over here. Maybe place my pointer here and make this one 82. Scale this up. Yeah, okay, we can continue to add a few more details so that this looks more complete. Right now it needs a door. Maybe we can shift D and move this into Z direction. Now what we can do is we can delete this part. To do that, we can just press spacebar or search option and type separate. By loose parts will make each part separate again. Okay, so I delete this one and scale these. Okay, and I'll move it into sorry, I'll go to the global view and move it into Z direction. Okay, now I can have a door here. I'll just duplicate this and scale this one. Sorry, I'll have to change the origin to set origin to geometry. Yeah, so right now it's right in the center, and move it back. And maybe you can create something like a door handle here, a small cube vertically stretched. Keep it very basic. You don't need to get into any detail, and just work with the basic transformation commands. Now we can make a duplicate of this again and scale this down. Go to the front view and maybe we can align this over here, something like this. It could be like a window. We can add few bricks. Okay, just click over here and add a cube and scale this down. Okay, yeah, something just to break the flat wall. We can just scale this up a bit. Go to the side view, make a duplicate of this, few more duplicates, a few over here. Now what I can do is I can just take this one over here and rotate this into 90-degree, and just go to the front view and place few at the front. Okay, shift D, shift D, very basic stuff. Shift D, go to the break the symmetry and keep it non-uniform so that it looks natural a bit. And we can also place few of them on the ground to break the flat ground, break the texture a bit. Go to the top view and just place few, sorry, I'll make this one a rectangle first. Shift D, now I can select all these and combine them by Control J and maybe RZ180, or you can simply type S and in X direction -1. Okay, so it flips the geometry other way around. Now we can add few lampposts over here. Place your cursor over here and add one cylinder. Pop up from the pop-up window. I'm going to, sorry, the segments to 4. Yeah, 6 is fine. Move this, scale this up. Now you can see with the 6 segments it looks like a hexagon. It is a hexagon actually. Okay, now we can place our pointer over here, 3D cursor, and bring one cone and change the radius to so that it looks like a lamp. Okay, here 8 segments again. You can scale this up I can make this one much smaller. Okay, it looks too thick. G and Z direction. Alright, now I'll make a copy of this and move it into X direction. I'm quickly going to make a cube over here just to make it look like a rooftop. You can add a cylinder over here to make it look like a pipe or something. Shift D, Shift D, go to the side view and move them, select all these three, move them up. Okay, you can also duplicate them and place them other side. Shift D, place them over here. And you can use align command if you want to work very precisely and work perfectly with the dimension. You know how these work now. Add a cone, change this back to, now Shift Z. Now I'll bring a cylinder again. Okay, this is like a tank or something, rooftop. At the rooftop we can copy few of these cylinders and place them over here. RX90, SX, SY and GY. Alright, sorry, I just want to even though this is a very basic model, you can always add details in whichever form you're working. Okay, this is also considered as a style. A lot of games are actually in very low poly models. Okay, Shift D, move it into Y direction, place it over here. Shift X, GX, Shift scale and make a duplicate, place it over here. I'll make a duplicate of this and move this upwards. What I can do is I can make it like a signboard or something. I can maybe type pizza or sorry about that, it's very noisy here. I hope you guys can hear me clearly. I live I have like a very large windows and my room is not soundproofed. I hope you guys can focus on the audio here and the background is bearable. Okay, so we have the signboard over here and then we can place one signboard over here. Yeah, I'll save the file. Right now the road looks too wide. I'm going to just change this a bit. I can just shift these things so that we have more room in the storefront, and maybe I can move these over here. Alright, we can have a much thicker base, like 2 meters. Okay guys, so I think we have the model ready. You can add more details if you want. You can really go crazy and keep on adding details. But the purpose of this process is actually to get used to the commands we have discussed, like a transformation, working with a different axis and a global local direction, snapping options and all. There are more commands related to selection and soft selection, which we will discuss when we start editing objects. Right now I just want you to work with basic primitives and get your self used to into the 3 dimensions of this software so that you get comfortable for the next chapter. Now what we can do is we can assign colors to these. Actually those are not colors, actually it's called material in 3D softwares. Do not get into any details. This is just so that you can have fun with this on the first day and create a nice render. Just follow these commands and do not get into details. Like I said, we will discuss about the lighting, material and everything in detail in the further chapters. This is just so that you can preview your model and have fun with it, okay, after maybe hours of working. Let's go to the render properties over here and change this one to cycles. And we are going to go to environment properties. Now if we hit the render option over here, like how we can see the wireframe and then solid, and then there is a look depth mode. Now you can see everything is white. Okay, if I go to the render tab, I'll disable the overlays. You can see there are no lights, no colors, nothing. So what I can do is I can click on the environment properties and go to the color button. Click on this button and simply bring the environment texture. Click open. I'm going to bring in this HDRI I have. This HDRI is by hdrheaven.com. You can download it online, or I can redirect you in the description below. And just go to the ray visibility and switch off the camera so that we don't see the image in the background but just the lights. Now you can see the HDRI is creating some really interesting light effect over here, but our model is still in the grayscale. Okay, I'll just go to the solid mode. Okay, make one more window, create this one a rendered. So you can assign material in this view and see the preview over here. I'll press N and T to hide these, N and T. I can also just merge this timeline so that we have more room to work with. Like I said, I don't want you to guys to get into any details. I just want to assign basic colors, and you can so that you can have a better looking model on your first day. Simply go to the material editor and material properties, and let's select the main cube first and click on new. And from the base color, now we have a new material. From the base color, let's make a brown color. Okay, and you can see the wall is now the brown color. For this wall, I'll make new material and make this something like a yellow, maybe darker values. If you want to assign the same material to this one, you can simply click this, and from the drag down just select material 2, which is the yellow material. It doesn't look yellow because it's catching some reflections from the environment, which is black, but don't worry about it. We can select all these bricks, combine them, Ctrl J, and make a new material. You can double click and name your materials like a brick, and I'll change the materials something like off-white. Grab the road, make a new material, change the color to gray, no saturation, and then I can select the trees and combine them and make one material for the trees. This one will be, of course, the green color, and double click, make it trees, right? Storefront, we can have something really dark but less saturated. For all the windows, what we can do is select the glass of the window and combine them. We can make a window glass material and make it look like a black color or something, like really deep. The ground color could be gray as well. So it's a totally your choice, and this is your first day. You make it however you want this to be. From here I'll just grab maybe the white one. I'll make the doors black. I'll place a plane. So I think you guys understand the process now of creating some very basic geometry and working with the transforms. Combine the windows and create a new material. Add some interesting color, something off-white which doesn't look very bright. Okay guys, so I've assigned a few random colors to each of the objects, and whichever objects were like of the same materials, I just combined them. And there are ways to transfer material from one object to another one, but we will discuss that at later stage. And if you want to really go crazy with this, you can just shift D and move it into X direction, and make more buildings out of it. And maybe you can make one more copy and move it into y direction, and then RZ180. Okay, okay. So you have a pretty decent looking low poly, maybe a colony or something. This looks interesting. Like I said about the materials, about the environment, please don't get into any details at this moment, and just work on the very basics. These materials I have assigned just for the fun purpose. We will discuss about how the materials work, and what is the meaning of all these parameters over here in the later chapters. But for now, just enjoy your first day and make something which is very simple but yet fun. All right, so now I placed my buildings in some arrangement, and I also placed few trees in the center. So this is just optional, and this is just for presentation purpose. So you can place your buildings however you want, and once you have applied all the materials and you want to take some nice render out of it, then you'll have to bring a camera in your scene. Okay, now right now I already have a camera. What I'll do is I'll just disable the camera. Sorry, yeah, I'll just delete this camera. So if you go to the perspective view and try to render it, okay, sorry, this is the viewport shading. If you want to actually render it, then you'll have to go over here and press render image. Now over here you can see there is no camera found in the scene. That is why it can't render your scene. Okay, now to render your scene, what you can do is simply click over here. Okay, and click anywhere and bring one camera. Okay, and now we have a camera in the scene. Yeah, sorry, it's a very small camera, you can't see it. So we have a camera in the scene. Okay, now you can either press 0 and then go to the camera view and try to position it. What you can do is, if you press N on the viewport, this will bring this side panel. Okay, now right now if you rotate your view, it will move you out of the camera. Okay, then you are out in the 3D perspective. Okay, not in the camera. Now if you enable this view over here, this one, lock camera to view, now whatever changes you are doing to the view, now it's locking it to the camera. Okay, now your camera is actually moving, it's not the 3D perspective view. Okay, so right now to clear this out, what I'll do is I'll just undo this. Okay, and bring one more view over here. Now see what happens. My camera is over here. Okay, and okay, I'll just delete this and make a camera again. I'll click over here and place one camera. All right, now I press 0, and if I orbit my view now, it will take me out of the view. Okay, and nothing is changing over here. Now if I press 0 to show the camera view and click this button, lock camera to view. Sorry, first I'll just zoom in a bit. Lock camera to view. Now see, my camera is moving as I'm changing this view over here. Okay, all right, I think this looks fine. And now when I'm sure about the view, I can unclick this option again, and now my camera is over here. So right now the viewport clipping is actually masking your view. What you can do is go to the view, and if you see any viewport clipping happening, you can change this from view focal length clip start. Yeah, change these settings and increase the end limit a bit further, maybe 2500. All right, now this should be enough. All right, I'll scale up my camera a bit so I can see it in the view. So yeah, this is how you place a camera. Now there is one other way if you don't want to. Okay, so there is one other way which is a much convenient and much shorter way. What you can do is simply place your camera in the view, and now if you want to align your camera to this view, you can press Control Alt and 0. Okay, now you see your camera have moved in the view and aligned your camera to the perspective view you were looking into. Okay, and this is much more effective and faster. All right, now just like any other objects, you can move your camera, rotate your camera, and place it manually. If you want, you can also animate it. So now that we have the camera in the view, I'll just make few changes, merge this view. Okay, now if you press render, this will render your image. All right, all right, so it's going to take some time to render, and what you can do is once your render is complete, you can click on image and save your file externally wherever you want. Okay, you can adjust the format from here and save the image. All right, and if you're looking for more inspiration, what you can do is you can go to Pinterest and you can just type interior. So you can create your own rooms, very basic geometry like this, and have fun with it. So I hope you guys understand the basic commands now, and in next chapter we are going to discuss how to edit one object and create different forms. Like not all the objects are available in the add menu. We can create custom shapes, we can break the geometry, delete and manipulate it however you want. So we are going to actually make 3D models of our own, and not just stick with the basic primitives. I think you will enjoy the next chapter. If this is your first day in 3D and you haven't worked in 3D before, I would suggest you continue this for at least a day or two, and get used to all the basics so that you have very good command over transformation tools, and you understand the concept of pivot point and the 3D cursor and all these options we discussed over here. This is important so that you can enjoy the further tutorials and you won't have to actually go back and forth and check what the short commands are. You can actually get your speed up and running. Okay, I'll see you guys in the next chapter, and do share your version of the first day assignment. See you guys around. Yeah, thank you.